No setup, I have to say. Everything you do really well.
There's no point in fucking doing it otherwise.
Yeah, you give a shit even about your podcast, don't you? You give a shit about everything.
There's just no point in doing it otherwise.
I mean, even going to the toilet, you gave a shit. I loved all the instructions you had. Yeah. I mean, the fact you put, I was thinking, are you sure you can just say, if you don't put down the lid, put the brown beer, I'm going to send you your P45. I'm pretty sure someone could sue you for that. if someone took a
fucking good luck to them, innit? Fucking sad bastards, if that's what they got to do.
God, I see, I'm way more woke and politically sensitive about like that.
You are.
I would be really worried about putting that on. I'd go, no, whoa, calm. Let's just not go that far.
Fuck them. Welcome back to this next episode of the Give a Shit podcast. Today, I've got a real special guest for you. Gurinder Dhillon of Autocar. Thank you for coming on.
Hey, thank you, Charles, for inviting me.
No problem at all. I want to start by really understanding, like, who you are. Where did you start? And what that journey you've been on? You've obviously been on a huge journey, and I just really want to start with the guest by you introducing yourself. Is probably a good starting point.
Okay, so look, I mean, I think I've been an entrepreneur for the best part now of, since I left university, right? So that's now going on for like 38 years. And what's really weird, I think, is there wasn't such a thing as an entrepreneur back then, right? Okay. It was a funny word. It was a French word as far as anyone concerned. So there was no clubs, there was no the mentoring, there was none of the kind of, podcasts and papers that now write about it. Back then it was like, oh, it means you can't get a job. That's what
you're unemployable.
You're freaking unemployable. That's why you're doing your own, because no one did their own thing 38 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And there was no one to go and see, right? So there was no internet. This was pre-internet. So you're kind of in your own bubble, trying to figure out things. And so I left university and went and joined my dad's business.
Okay.
And it was just a two-man business, me and him. He did textiles, household textiles.
Okay.
We went on that kind of work together. But what I thought was he was in household textile, and I thought it was a declining market. So he did all the kind of market traders, wholesalers, the markets that you get in all your local towns around here in Brummie. Mm-hmm. And what was happening is we were having all the big retail chains start building out, Tesco superstores and everything else. Yeah. And so that market was dying. And I thought, look, this business is in decline. I've got to go and find out a new thing. So then I went out on my own entrepreneurial journey after that.
And what did Dad say to that?
I think, look, I said to him, Dad, look, I've got to lean into the future, right? And I don't think this is the future. Yeah. And I've got to go and find it. And I didn't know what it looked like. and also, I tried a few things and it didn't work out, right?
Good luck, son.
Yeah. And one of the things I remember this, and I thought, you know what? You learn these great lessons in life. Yeah. And one of the great lessons he said to me was, I went to some, I think it was a Ponzi scheme. I'm going to be honest with you.
Fair.
But it was one of these kind of water filter businesses, right? Where they said, like, go around, knock on doors, and you put a water filter on it. Okay. And the guy who was advertising it was basically you sold it. He would get you to sell it for him. Then you pass it on to others, and you all make a small commission. Yeah. So kind of like a Ponzi or whatever those marketing systems. Yeah. And I said, Dad, look, it was so good a water filter. You put wine in. And you got water out. It filtered everything. And my dad said, that's no business, son. The business is put water in and get wine out. You add value. Don't take the value out.
He's right. He's so right.
And I went, oh, yeah, Dad, shit. you're absolutely...
Probably not the right thing.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. He said, yeah. So he said, son, you're sucking out everything out of there. You've got to find a business where you're adding value. Put water in and get wine out.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
And that's a lesson.
So you graduated university back in 1990?
Correct.
And you found Autocar in 2013?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Right. 15, actually, 2015.
Okay. So take me back on that, 23, 25-year journey. Take me back.
From 19...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because what were you doing? What was that, I suppose, defining moment to a certain degree where you realised, you'd done uni? Why go and not what did you do at university?
So I did management. So I went to one of the first management schools in the UK, Manchester, and it was UMIST, which was their idea of MIT in Boston, right? So it was University of Manchester Institute of Science and Technology. Okay. So it was applying management sciences to management. Okay. And basically all my friends went off to the kind of consulting firms, accountancy firms, a few went into corporate. Okay. And it was a kind of grounding school, right, for that. And I was probably one of the few that actually went and went straight away and tried to do my own thing. Maybe there's a little bit of imposter syndrome, but also you just wanted to build something.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to kind of do the 9-to-5 job working for a corporate or a consultancy. Now, the difference is they were getting paid and going up the ladder of life and starting to do things. I was living at home, not earning a lot of money and trying to figure things out. And I tried a number of things. I mean, I was pitching stuff like, I had a great idea called Checkout TV.
Go on.
Yeah, which was like, I thought supermarkets, like, you know, while you're queuing up, and then you remember the queues used to be really bad. And
yeah, shit.
Why not have a Checkout TV there and advertise, right? You've got all this kind of people there, sitting there, waiting in the queue. And you remember you were all bored and no one had phones then.
Yeah, cool.
So put a Checkout TV on there and they could advertise and you've got your customer waiting there to be advertised to, right?
How did that go for you?
Not very well. So I pitched that. I got Sainsbury's to have a meeting with me. Yeah, I got Sainsbury's to have a meeting. And they said to me, well, one, you're a little bit late because they haven't got to the checkout.
Yeah, we've already done that.
But I said to them, well, you know, they are coming back next week. So at least you're planting the product in their idea. Like, oh, that ready meal could be that. Yeah. And also they said the other thing was, we want to get people through.
Okay.
All right. But over the time, you did start to see sometimes at supermarkets, petrol stations, they started to put TV screens and everything else.
Yeah.
And so, look, it didn't work out. But you've got to have, I think, a sense of curiosity. So you got to figure out stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So you out of university, you were like, right, I've got to work for me.
Yeah.
I cannot go and just get a job.
Yeah.
And how did you support yourself at that stage?
So look, I was living at home. I was working with my dad. So I was making a bit of money doing the textile business. Yeah. And then I started doing a bit of research and started looking at stuff. And I think, look, the one thing to point out is to figure out cultural trends, okay? Where are there cultural shifts going on, okay? So the thing I like to say was there was a time I used to go out to shop and come home for a coffee. Now I go out for a coffee and come home to shop.
Yeah.
Like, when did that happen?
Yeah.
Right? And it didn't happen on one day.
Of course.
It starts to shift, right?
Yeah.
Now, can you catch that wave early? Okay. So one of the ones that I looked at was a business I set up in my late 20s called Four Corners.
Right.
Okay. And we did dark kitchens. So when I set up Deliveroo 15 years too early.
Shit.
So we did that pre 9/11.
Yeah.
1998. Built a huge dark kitchen. Probably 4,000 square feet. I don't know what your warehouse is.
30,000.
Yeah. So, you know, a decent sized kitchen for a thing.
Yeah.
And we had Chinese chefs, Thai chefs, Indian chefs. They were all chefs of the year. So I had the Harrods Thai chef, Harrods Chinese chef, Indian chef of the year.
Oh, you went all in?
Yeah, wood-fired pizzas. This wasn't cheap and cheerful.
Fuck, that's like proper.
Wood-fired pizzas, did cigarettes, did wine.
Did you?
Yeah.
Good
So delivered cigarettes, right? Hugely successful. I mean, we were doing a family of 4 on a Friday night every 30 seconds, right? Because they were ordering,
my God.
So we were ordering lots of big orders. Because of course families would get together, friends would get together, and they would order it, right? Cigarettes, wine, whatever. Couldn't make any money. It was so high revenue. We had 50 drivers at one location, and we went and we started because we were so busy.
Why? Why couldn't you make any money?
Because we were so ramped. We were so peaky. All right. So the problem was it would shoot up vertically. So you'd get a hockey stick moment between about 7:30 and 9. Because again, there was no internet, there was no forward planning. People would ring and they would want the phone answered. If you didn't take that call, they were going to go somewhere else. And so everyone pushed. But then vice versa, on a Monday, it would be quiet, right? Because relatively speaking. But the Friday, Saturday, Sundays, see, Pete, you also had other variables, right? Bad weather. So suddenly, you know, if you had bad weather, you'd get flooded, but vice versa on a June. If you know, in April, like last weekend, it was a beautifully sunny day. Everyone's barbecuing, and you're kind of going, "I'm all geared up for you guys. Where are you?
Where are you?"
Yeah, and it was hard to build automation into that because it was such a personalized product. So I think that was a big learning, right? Just because serendipity has a lot to play with in business, that your timing isn't there. And we didn't have internet, we didn't have infrastructure. The other thing is we sold alcohol, but we didn't have the alcohol margin. Because in those days, again, cultural shift was you ordered your takeaway, closed the front door, went down to the offie, Threshers, wine rack.
Yeah, of course.
Get your bottle of beer, or your 6-pack or your bottle of wine. By the time you came home, the takeaway was there.
Yeah.
But the wine racks hadn't closed yet, but they were about to start closing. But you had to wait for Threshers and wine rack to go.
Yeah, cool.
So sometimes the trouble is, can you bleed long enough till the cultural shift happens?
Yeah. And so how long did that go on for?
So that went on for about 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
We had 3 branches, all in key areas. So we were in Camden, Fulham, Chiswick. Again, as I said, hugely successful.
Had you made money at that point to be able to set them up?
No,
or were
no,
you,
it was
were
all
you
borrowed.
still broke?
Yeah, I was still broke. All right? Everyone else gets paid.
Yeah.
But look, like a father, like an entrepreneur, you always eat last.
Yeah, always. Yeah. That's the rule.
That's the rule.
Even now.
Even now.
I don't know. I was trying.
Yeah, exactly. That was it. That was my Wegovy. That was my Manjaro. Entrepreneurship is a natural Manjaro. You're freaking penniless, hungry, and you're sick with worry, so you're not even that hungry, right? Because you're kind of going up and down, right? It's a natural Manjaro. Yeah. So if you ever want to do it, don't waste your money on drugs. Yeah, just set up a business. That will give you.
And did you sell that business or?
Yeah, I did for nothing. Okay. So just covered the money that it owed.
Yeah.
I didn't make anything out of it. Okay. And whilst I was doing that. And the big lesson there was my wife turned around, and this is the bit that's really hard in business. You think you can turn it around, right? Because you're just kind of grinding away. And my wife turned around to me and said, "Look, she'd given up her job. She was, and that was partly supporting me, by the way. And we had twins, and she said, I'm pregnant, and she said, you need to get your shit together. Yeah. This isn't working. Yeah. You've got mouths to feed. Go find something else." And the hardest thing about failure is that whilst you have failed, you're not a failure. And that is a really hard bit
Is that more of a lesson?
Yeah, because I think, look, when you're young, you're in your 20s, right? You're broke. It's a punch. Mm-hmm. It's a body blow, right? Your first time you've gone out and it just hasn't worked out. Yeah. And the idea was good because, look, subsequently it has happened.
Yeah.
But timing, execution is everything in those days. And so you sat there and you kind of think, and then my wife said, look, just find something. And what happened was the guy who used to sell me chemicals at the time, a guy called Steve Letchford, who was a black cab driver, said, have you ever thought about renting black cabs? Because I was looking at kind of asset management, something which wasn't so peaky on revenue and much more like rent. Okay. And property was a big thing in those days, but property was always paper wealth. Yeah. You needed actually cash wealth because I had babies to feed, right? Of course. And he said, have you thought about renting cabs? Because black cab drivers, we spend years doing the knowledge, and it takes 3 or 4 years. And so when we come out of it, we're broke. So we rent a cab for a while, and then eventually we might buy one. So have you thought about renting that? And I went, okay, yeah, that's not a bad idea. Started looking into it, bought one cab, borrowed the money, and mortgaged my mother's house.
Did you?
Yeah. God, and she's a huge inspiration to me. And then started building it. And also, the other interesting bit at that moment in life was I'd lost my father. Okay. And I think for anyone, that's a body blow. Yeah. Right? I was 32. Yeah. I was 6 months away from getting married. Okay. And my wife, wasn't pregnant at that moment. But that is a big punch.
Was that a shock?
Yeah.
Out of the blue?
Yeah, he went to bed one night and passed away. And I think that was, particularly personal for me. I was really close to my father.
What did you learn from that?
I think one of the things that it does to any man is takes him out of the shadow of his father, right? Because there's always that slight, they cast a big shadow over you, I think.
How successful was your dad?
Yeah, he was reasonable. Yeah, he'd been successful. Look, as a small businessman, one man, two man, but he'd bought a few properties, done a few things, had a bit of cash.
So he was an entrepreneur?
Yeah, he was an entrepreneur. He was a school teacher, headmaster. Okay. And one of the reasons why I went into entrepreneurship, and the only reason I wanted success, was my mother was a teacher and my father was a headmaster. And when they came here, the qualifications weren't recognised. So he went into business. My mother worked in a bank as a cashier. And one of the things he always said was the way out of poverty is education. Right? It's your only way out. And it's the only gift I can give you that you can't give me back. Yeah. Right? Because it gets embedded in you. Mm-hmm. So the only thing I ever wanted to do for my children was to give them a good education. And then the rest is up to them.
Yeah, totally. And do you think then that the intelligent part, like the rate of learning, like did you, when you left uni and thinking about setting up that business, setting up how much research and that did you have to do to be able to launch that? Or did you just go in all in?
No. I did loads. So, and again, curiosity, right? So I don't know if you know these things like Mintel reports and all that.
I don't know.
No, okay, so Mintel's like an intelligence report that used to do like it would be a book. Okay. They would do different sectors, right? And they would cost like £500 to £1,000. So only banks would buy them, right? Because it wasn't online. It was like a paper-bound book with research. Yeah. And they don't print many. Yeah. So they charge like thousands of pounds. But what I found out was the British Library got given a copy. So any report or any book is normally given to the British Library as a freebie, okay?
Yeah.
But then to get into the British Library, you needed to be a researcher. So I wrote the paperwork saying, I'm
Here I am.
researching. I'm researching. Can you give me like a library card to get in?
Yeah.
So they gave me a library card.
Oh, I love that.
And then I went there and I used to sit there for days reading these reports, trying to figure out, like, is my critical thinking going to work and where was the testing of it? And again, there was that cultural trend that people were getting busier with, you know, the yuppies was a term back in there. Mm-hmm. Everyone's busy working. And mums and dads were both working now.
Yeah.
So there was this need to sometimes have food. So ready meals were picking up, but sometimes they wanted a takeaway.
Yeah.
And it was like, could you have the gentrification of takeaways or on the next level, uplift of that? And so that's where there was this trend there. And it was like learning that. And so the thinking was right, but still execution is super hard, even when you've got the thinking right.
So the lesson people listening now, like that lesson of knowing, like the wife's had to come to you and say, like, come on, you need to step up now. This has gone on too long and you need to pull away. You need to actually provide. What would you tell the people that are in that business at the moment that are really slugging at it and they really want to continue to go? You know, what's that one message that you would leave with them to like know when's enough?
Yeah. So look, this is a tricky part of business.
It's so hard.
Okay. So stubbornness, I think, is you just keep piling on, even when all the facts are telling you differently.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Everyone is telling you the facts, but there's stubbornness and just keep going. Right?
Yeah.
And that's foolhardy.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of what happened to me. And conviction is, on the other hand, saying, I believe this is going to pull out. I know we've got a few bumps in the road, but it's all going to come good.
Yeah.
The problem is, it's really hard to tell at the time.
Yeah.
With hindsight, it kind of makes sense. But when you're in the moment, it's really hard to figure out, am I being stubborn here? Or have I got conviction?
Totally.
And the only thing I would say is give it time. Now, what I always like to think is you should fail fast, right?
Yeah.
Get cracking, see if anything sticks. And if you're starting to get momentum and you're starting to get lift, that's when you can know. And I think the other thing is also try to find a market with a rising tide. If that market is naturally growing, then when you're making mistakes, and we were just talking about this earlier, right? Like, you know, I asked you, how's business going?
Yeah.
Look, it's going okay, but it's not amazing. But then I would imagine, the actual natural demand in the marketplace for flooring isn't going exponentially bigger, right? It's not like suddenly there are loads of new warehouses opening up all the time. And so you're actually in the cycle of X number of warehouses out there, and they're on an X number of cycle every 5 years that they do their floors, right? And that's the market you're in. And so you're not going to outperform. You might do marginally better than your competition, but you're not going to get 5X.
Agreed.
So you've got to find the rising tides.
Yes.
And I think that's where we've always tried to go.
Like that. So this show is about, giving a shit. And I remember when we first met, which was on the Goldman, and obviously my tones are a little different to your tones.
Amen to that one. Amen to that. I had to do that quite a few times.
Yeah. And there was a couple of fuck you moments there, but like for me, like I know what makes me tick, and I know who I am as an individual, and I know what sits in my core. And I know that give a shit for me is everything. And I think that's through a hard growing up and times that I had as a kid to now where I am today as a, an 8-figure entrepreneur. That like moment where somebody's told you as a kid, you'll never achieve nothing, you'll go nowhere. That drive and determination of that I wasn't the brightest, I didn't have the greatest education, I didn't have any of that. What I had was a set of tools that I was willing to go and win. And I was willing to put everything on the line to win. And I know that for me was all about just giving a shit. Just show up, be the best version of you every day. And don't worry about what everybody else is thinking. And don't worry what everybody else is saying. And I'll continue to go and do me over and over and over again. So for you...
With colourful language, of course. with a lot of colourful language.
Always, So for you, what is them things, I suppose, that you really give a shit about?
So I think, look, I think grit comes from two things, right? It comes from passion and perseverance. Right? There's two elements of it. And so you've got to have a slightly curious mind about being interested in stuff. And I've just generally always been interested in business, trying to figure out what works, why does it work, what makes success and everything else. I think there's the immigrant mentality as well, that you're pushed from a family. I think, look, my parents sacrificed a lot. So I was sent to private school, okay? And
that's because your mum and dad were teachers, though.
Yeah.
They want a great education for you,
Yeah. And I went to a posh private school. And I was probably the poorest kid going there, right? So I was a little bit, I'm going to be honest, I was a little bit embarrassed that my father would drop me off in a van. Okay.
Was you?
Yeah, okay. Because everyone else got dropped off in a car.
Yeah,
right?
or the driver dropped them off.
Yeah. Well, a few got dropped off by drivers, right?
Of course I did.
Yeah. One guy used to get dropped off in a Rolls Royce, okay? And I met him many years later.
You turned up in the transit.
And I turned up in a transit, right?
Yes, absolutely love that.
I love it. But what was really interesting is we met many years later. I said, I used to be really embarrassed being dropped off in a van. He said, I was just embarrassed being dropped off in a Rolls Royce. He said, we all wanted to be just dropped off in a Ford Mondeo because you just wanted to be like every other kid.
Yeah.
He didn't want to be in the Rolls. I didn't want to be in the van. We just wanted to be in the middle, right?
Yeah, okay.
And look, and I think my parents gave up everything to say, look, son, here's a chance for you to go and do something. So to kind of reward that and pay that back and make your mothers proud, which is a really big part of what we believe in, was how can I do that? How can I just take some people on a journey and help them? And I think if you said to me what I love helping people and I love community. I love human connections. I really love human connections. I think there's so much to be said of being kind, generous, and humble. I think the other thing really important to me is be humble, otherwise life will humble you. Because I think it will come round, you get a little ahead of your skis, you get too big for your ego.
Totally agree.
And it'll just cut you at the end, right? You'll get caught. And often you'll be blindsided by something that you just didn't even see coming. But because you were just got too big for your boots or got ahead of your skis, you got points. So staying humble and being open and learning, I think is right. You know, someone once said, I think it was Federer once said, it was like, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice.
It's nice.
You know, and I think it's just always be polite.
Yeah, always.
Few less F words, maybe.
No, fuck that. Don't worry about that.
And okay, well, maybe if that works, it works, I guess. And just, I think being part of a community, and one of the great pleasures of Otto, I said, was always the people, right? The drivers that we try to help along the journey. But also what we want to do was take a bunch of ordinary people. Mm-hmm. Like I was one of the few that had a university. In fact, when he started, I was the only one with a degree. Okay. And we said, look, we take a bunch of ordinary people and take them on an extraordinary journey. In our own little way. Yeah. So, let's just take these guys and give them an experience that they would never thought they were going to have.
But don't you agree that most of the greatest businesses in the world have been built on a group of average people coming together to build something great? Yeah.
And caring. And just giving a shit.
Giving a shit.
And that's what we did. Yeah. We said, look, we will do everything. We will bury ourselves to get you. And one of the things I said to everyone was that we will stand on the shoulders of banks, and we will. You as a driver stand on our shoulders, right? Mm-hmm. And we'll take great care of you. We'll cradle you from the start to him. But all we ask is as my mother would say, was, son, look, if the guy's, we're renting you a car. Yeah. If the guy's not paying you after 4 weeks, but you can see him driving around town, so you take a shoe off, hit me around the head, and goes, he's making a fool of you, right? Like, why would you do that? Whereas if the guy was on a 3-year rent-to-buy contract, and after 2.5 years, and he might have had a few bumps along the way, but then he's dropping the keys back. Why is he doing that? Why does he come that way? And we had a driver called Douglas who got to 2.5 years and he was dropping the keys off to us. Okay. And we went, Douglas, I know you've kind of been up and down, but you're 6 months from owning this car. Yeah, it's worth like 16,000 pounds. You owe us like 6. Why are you giving us the keys back? I mean, look, a banker might go, rub his hands and go, nice guy. I'll take that all day. Why ask the question? I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth. Yeah. And he turned around to me and said, look, my father's got cancer. I'm from Brazil, all right? So he's a little bit, so bluntly, a little bit uneducated in the sense of his accent and, he doesn't know the system. So he said, look, here are the keys. He's a little bit, underprivileged, shall we say. Here are the keys. And I'm going to just get back in his broken English, and I'm just going to fly back to Brazil and take care of my father. I said, well, look, your father is my father. Having lost a father, I knew that pain. And I said, you look after your father. Your car's going to just sit there. He said, but I don't know when I'm coming back. I said, I don't care. But if you're going to come back, we'll wait 6 months, 7 months, whatever it is. Just communicate to us that you're coming, and we'll wait for you. And he left.
That's powerful, mate.
And he came back 5 months later. Sadly, his father did die. Okay. And we said, look, there's your car. Just continue on with your payments. No penalties, nothing. And because my mother said at that point, son, you own 1,000 cars, and that's how you make your money out of that one guy. When he needed to lean on you, you need to catch him. You need to pick him up.
Mum sounds quite clever.
Yeah, she's a wise lady, right? Yeah. And so that's, so that was back to our values, right? Yeah. And we wanted to live on our values.
I fucking love that.
And so we proved it. And then, look, it happened to us in COVID, all right? If you ever want to know what pressure feels like, we went into COVID, and by that point we were at 3,000 vehicles in London, okay? And it's March 2020, and our business fundamentally is moving fun and joy around, right?
Yeah.
Right? Going to parties, weddings, dinners, couples, whatever, gatherings, we move fun and joy around. It was illegal to have fun and joy, right? Yeah. So we had 3,000 drivers who were all paying, who want these assets for themselves, because that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to help families, provide for their families in a sustainable way, and help. And we went into lockdown. And we said, before lockdown happened on the Friday, and on the Wednesday we said to everyone, don't pay us. I said, it's better that we give it to them as a gift and they take it. And it wasn't that they don't want to pay us. We could see, right? Already, even though lockdown was on the Friday, that Monday, we could see the roads were already quiet. The restaurants were already quiet. Everything was going quiet. So these guys are running around aimlessly. It's not that they're not trying to work, just no work around. Yeah. So it's better that we give than they take. So we started losing £6,000 an hour, every hour. Monday to Friday.
Fucking hell.
9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And that was the only way I could conceptualize it. It was $250,000 a week, but you can't do it that way because then you can't go to bed. Your head's exploding. And but I'd say, look, we'd lose £6,000 an hour, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And at 5 p.m. I'd stop losing money in my mind. I'd sit down with my family, we'd have a dinner, and we'd just try to...
And then 9 a.m. you'd start again.
And you would battle with...
Is that how you compartmentalise it?
Yeah, otherwise it's going to eat you, right? It's going to be like a cancer, right?
Totally.
Like, I can't sleep because I'm literally losing money. Whereas I was trying to say, during the day, I'm losing, I don't know what it works out at, but I'm losing, £100 a minute.
Yeah.
And if you think, it's a massive amount, right? Yeah. And the reason we were losing that money is the banks had not given us forbearance. They said, you've got to still pay us because COVID's only going to be a week or two problem. It's nothing big. But we'd already stopped taking income. Okay. And again, this is, my daughter said to me, she said, Dad, if you're going to die on your sword. Die on your values.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah? If you're going to go down, then everyone will always say, you didn't try to do something else, so die on your sword. Yeah. And so we said, okay. That's how we're going to plan. So we burnt and we went to $250,000 the first week.
Jesus Christ.
Second week, another $250,000. Went on for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. And that might not sound long to most people, but if you're in it and you just don't know. We had, at the time, $3 million in the bank. Mm-hmm. We'd lost $1.5 million already. We had 6 more weeks before we went bust. And most businesses go bust. If you said stop trading here for 2 to 3 weeks, you'd think that would it would really hurt if you got no order. Really hurt. So we'd done 6, and we're a much more bigger scale. And I'd spent 10 years building this business for it to suddenly just turn on a
and through no fault of your own.
And my wife said, and I think one of the greatest qualities, and I think this is really important business. If you say some of the best business decisions I made ever in life was actually marrying my wife. 100%. And I don't mean that in the sense that she had money or anything, because she had a bit of money, but nothing like that. It was more about support. Yeah. Because you have to be a team in it to get in there. And she said to me, sweetheart, if it all goes to shit, it doesn't matter. We might never go on a foreign holiday. We'll just go to Brighton, take some packed sandwiches, and we'll have a lovely life. And we'll have a simple life, but it is what it is, and you'll find something new. Because if it happens to you, it will happen to others.
Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, we didn't know about things like forbearance and all this stuff at that time. We just thought the world was ending.
Yeah. My dad always said to me, behind every good man is a good woman. Yeah. And just pick the right one. Yeah. And I've definitely got that with Stace. I remember her saying to me when we went through some really tough times that, if we had nothing, we'd always have each other.
Yes.
And I'd sleep under a bridge with you if I had to, you know. And
that's exactly what my wife said.
But that's it.
And that gave me the strength, right? To say, push back. Let's
in the trench.
In the trench, we're going to do this, you know.
Yeah.
And it was like suddenly I was Rocky IV.
Yeah, it is.
I'm like the gag. There we go. I said, put on Eye of the Tiger.
Yeah.
I need Eye of the Tiger. Give it to me right now.
Rushing in the background.
Yeah, exactly. We're going. And look, and we argued with the banks, and then the banks gave us forbearance. And and one of the other problems, which, you know, these are crazy things, right? So we said, look, we'll just, people are going to say, why didn't you just cancel the direct debits? They said, if you cancel the direct debits, we can't give you forbearance because then you're in arrears. So the only way you can do is to bleed. And then I said, well, and because we had the most data, because we were a very data-driven business, we came to the banks the first week and said, look, all our data is telling us these vehicles are not moving. And they're not moving because there's no income, right? Yeah. So you've got to give us forbearance. And actually they said, look, first of all, we don't know how to stop direct debits because we've never had to do that before, right? You set up a direct debit, it's set up for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. They don't have pause function because no one's designed it for pause.
Of course.
So then they turned around and said, okay. And then I said, all right, but now that you've figured it out, can we go to you? And they go, well, no, because you've got a bit more money than everyone else, you can bleed longer. So we need to go and fix the guys who are live support, who came to us later because they weren't so data rich. But they've got so much less in the bank, so we've got to work on their direct debit
first.
So we were left at the back of the queue for 6 weeks, bleeding, trying to get this thing stopped. And then we got the forbearance, and then things were okay, and then we were able to fill up the coffers again and try to get going again.
And you did get to back some type of normality. And just so the guests understand, like your business model is effectively Uber drivers.
So we apply private hire drivers, but predominantly Uber drivers, but Uber, Bolt, but also if you work for a local minicab office, we do kind of rental cars, and we do rental cars and rent to buy.
And so the average, so I'm a new Uber driver now, just started, I want to get my own car. Am I coming to you or are you going to them?
No, they're coming to us.
Okay.
So we partner with the likes of Uber and a number of others.
Okay.
and what they're seeing is there's a couple of regulatory things like insurance, maintenance, and the vehicle finance and everything else, and we wrap it all together. And I think what was our little secret sauce in our business was everyone did rentals. There were a few rental companies. And again, at rising tide, Uber came along, just exploded the market. We were in black cabs at that time. We sold out of black cabs, switched into Uber, and said, well, this is the future, lean into the future. Because I think people weren't going to ride hail. Sorry, they weren't going to hail like that with their hands. They were going to start clicking with their fingers. So let's find this new moving order.
But you're definitely the poshest black cab driver I've ever met. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and now Uber driver, can I say?
Okay, fair.
Poshest and biggest, may I say? Because we're the biggest in Europe now as well. So that's it. And part of that was, look. What we found was, while we were rentals, we were like a vitamin. There were multiple choices there, right?
Yeah.
What we discovered was being a painkiller, and it's really important in any business to be a painkiller, not a vitamin.
Yeah.
And what we decided was we were going to do this ownership program, because these drivers wanted to own the car, because renting was slightly dead money, unless they wanted to do it for just a short period of time, 3 or 4 months. Yeah. Most of them wanted to own, but there was no mechanism for them to own. So we provided the finance. Did
that start off with like one car? You did one deal, 2 deals, 3 deals.
Yeah.
And that went from that to where you are now?
Yeah. So we started 10 years ago with 1 car.
Yeah.
We're now 8,000 vehicles in London.
Shit.
And I think the pain, and this is again, you want to know what difficult is. Think about scale, right? So you're raising 1 car to so I think the first year, 2015, we had 1 car. 2016, we were about 100 cars. 2017, about 300 cars. 2018, 600, 700. Anyway, it keeps going that rate. By 2020, 3,000.
Very capital heavy?
Raised 200 million.
Shit.
Yeah. Raised 200 million to buy those cars. Still only shareholder, so we managed to do that.
Yeah.
And that gave us control. But we raised 200 million in debt from banks. But the scale and speed. And so, again, as part of a business thing to learn is you've got to get a narrative right. And if you can get the narrative right, then the numbers add up. But you have to start with a story. And that was the story we said, look, this world is going to balloon.
Yeah.
And when there's going to be all this demand, and it's just going to keep growing. And everyone said, well, yeah, but there's only so many cars. I said, yeah, but Uber will actually grow the market. there'll be more people taking those. We also pointed to trends that young people. So I have another interesting theory, which I think is the car is the star. Okay, so when I was growing up, every TV show had a car in it. Knight Rider, right? James Bond. Okay, Miami Vice, that Ferrari.
Oh, here he is.
Yeah,
He's coming. He's coming.
Yeah, all those moments, right? So there was these cultural moments, right? And if you think about it and so suddenly people weren't. Nowadays, it's all about tech, right? Yeah. So if you see young people, the first thing you wanted when you were 18 was a car. A driving license, right? Get in your car. Maybe more so still in the country, but in the city, everyone just uses public transport. No one is driving. The average person now getting a driving license is in their early 20s, early to mid 20s, rather than 17. No. So the car was no longer there. And you tell me a TV show today that wasn't a car. Has it? Can you think of one?
Yeah, no.
Whereas before, there's loads of
them. Yeah, loads of them.
Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, Knight Rider. But also what's really interesting is, back then, if you look at it, all TV shows used to have a pub, right? Cheers was set in a pub, okay? Even EastEnders has the Queen Vic, Coronation Street, right? These are all old shows, right?
Yeah.
But what was the big trend that started happening then? Suddenly Friends came along, sit in a coffee shop, right? And when Frasier left Cheers and set up again as Frasier, he moved from the pub to a coffee shop in Seattle. So suddenly coffee became a new thing. And we go out for coffee. So there's a new cultural trends here. Yeah. That, suddenly, the yuppies were coming through town and they would all go to Starbucks or whatever else. And it was a thing to turn up. And it was like, oh, I made it because I've got a coffee cup. Whereas when I was growing up, it was a polystyrene coffee cup. Yeah. And it was instant coffee. Like there was nothing. £3. Are you joking? Are you having a laugh? Are you shitting me, as you would say? That you're paying £3.50 for a coffee when it was like next to nothing. And so these cultural shifts are really important to understand how the world's going and then what opportunities come from that. And so for us, that was Uber. And then what we found in there was, can we find a solution that differentiated us from anyone else? And it was that really ballooned us against everyone else.
Yeah, because like when I was looking at your business, I was analysing it and I was going, well, in 2022, you did 30 million quid. Mm-hmm. And then by 2024, you're doing over 50 million. Yeah. But you didn't raise the headcount very much. You went from 65 to 77. Mm. How do you systemise a fucking business in an extra £20 million worth of revenue with only that small headcount? How is that even possible?
So you get very process-driven, and you digitalize, right? And I think any market, any business, particularly in a new space, anyone that can digitalize it first can make a big difference. And it's not winner takes all, but winner takes a lot more.
But like, how many heart attacks were you having at that point?
Multiple. I was being resuscitated on a regular level. And we had
20 strokes.
We had a defibrillator next to my desk, and they were doing that to me on a regular basis. He's back. Let's go down to the meeting. Look, it's tough, right?
Look, yeah.
It is tough. Yeah. And I mean, look, with no exaggeration, we've just grown another 20% in the last 14 days because we just bought 2,200 vehicles. So we've gone from 6,000 to 8,000 vehicles in 2 weeks. And I think Van had the call when the bank called, said, can you take 1,500 cars? Can you do it tomorrow? And so, but because we've got automated systems, we can then onboard those drivers really quickly and build that. And
that's the beast, yeah?
And that's the problem in business, right? The easiest thing is, look, I think, I think this is a really important point. We had a really good COO join us, okay? And we hired a big COO to come and join the company a few years back. Okay. And he said, by the way, your talent is like, you've got good guys, but they're not exceptional, right? Okay. I said, okay. And why do you say that? He said, well, look, I came from a kind of VC-backed business where we were able to hire loads of great talent, and we front-filled. And I go, that's the difference. I said, we never had anyone carry our backpack up the mountain. Yeah. Right? We could only take who we could find who wanted to come on the journey with us, and we had to upskill on that way, right? Yeah. Whereas you could overfill the top tier of management because you got loads of capital. Of course. Right? Whereas we are slightly funding it ourselves, so we're really tight. So we always worked as a huddle. I love the fact that you have a huddle every morning, right? Yeah. I sit with 4 people. I don't sit in my own private office or anything like that. No. We sit 4 or 5 people, and we all have our backs to each other. And then when we want to huddle, we just turn our chairs around, and we just discuss whatever the problem is, solve it, and then get back to our desks and do it. We don't even often go to the meeting room. Because we just need to do it there and then get going again.
Totally agree.
And I think that has been a style of us trying to figure stuff out all the time and trying to make decisions quickly, figuring it out and bailing fast. So we huddle. And we don't have anywhere near as posh offices. So I might be posh, but I don't have anywhere near as posh as offices as you. Even though I'm not posh, by the way. I was born in a bed sit, for God's sake. But I did get a plum accent from
you
school.
did, yeah.
But that was coming from just really figuring stuff out and saying, look, and I said to him, that's the difference. We had to make do with what we had. And we could only agree to it. But what we did have is a clear belief in ourselves. And we were gonna pull ourselves up that mountain if that's all it took.
And do you believe in that grassroots feeling? You know, you just said like you made this new guy come in, big COO, big role. What does that say to everybody else in the org?
Yeah, look, we were trying to professionalise ourselves from the next level. So what we said is, look, what got us here doesn't get us there.
Okay.
And I needed to kind of...
there's a message there for everybody, isn't there?
Yeah.
There is a message there.
But there's an interesting twist to it, right? So we said, look, what get us here to get us there? And maybe we need to pad out because we're going to get ready for the next level of growth. Yeah. And I said, well, better that someone who's been on that journey. So he'd taken his previous business from 10 million to 150 million.
Shit.
Okay, so he'd gone from, I think, about 20, 30 employees to 400.
Okay.
And I thought, trying to save some mistakes here, get someone who's already walked that path before,
done it,
so we can avoid, we don't fall down some pit holes, right? Yeah. I think, but he had a lot of VC money to take him on that journey, so they burnt a bit of cash to get there.
Yeah.
And what was really, and he's a super lovely guy, really, honestly, still really friendly with him, amazing guy. But then he left us only just recently. Okay, just to you. And
was he headhunted or?
Yeah, he went off to a unicorn.
Of course he did.
Yeah, he did. And he said, look, I don't want to leave. And Jenny said, look, I didn't come along here to kind of work this. I was here for a long time. I said, okay. So what happened? And he said, look, I really had a reflective moment of self-awareness that he came from e-commerce and marketing, right? So he was really good on clickbaits and e-commerce. Yeah. But he said, you are going much more operational heavily now. I can see you're not finance and marketing. You're becoming much more ops heavy. You're bringing all the maintenance. We have body shops. We have all these things coming in-house now. So funny enough, our headcount is 80. We're probably going to go to 200 over the next year.
Shit.
Okay. Because we're going to become much more operational heavy for the next future growth, right? Because what got us here won't get us there. Right?
Get
it. And he said, I don't think I'm the right guy for that. And he said, look, I think you need to find someone else to do this. And
did you agree with him?
Yeah. And I thought, he said, I think you need to come back and be really front and center for this. And I think we've got to go back to being a bit lean. Okay. Because this likes bit is going to be a bit
Let's go and sweat a little bit.
Yeah, we've got to sweat again.
Yeah.
Right? And he said, look, I'm going to go off. And he went off to this, which is funny, back to his kind of thing. It's e-commerce and marketing, but in kind of...
And you wished him all the best.
Yes, and we're still friends. Best of it. He said, look, any help?
Yeah, I'm there.
I'm there. Yeah. No bad words.
Love
No bad feelings at all. But he said, I just don't think I'm the right guy for this, right? And I think...
Should you have seen that?
Do you know what? I was feeling it a little.
Were you?
Yeah.
Funny that, isn't it? In the gut.
Yeah. And I was thinking, maybe he's right.
He's very good, but...
but he's only in this lane. We need to be across a few lanes here. Yeah, and and that's the bit that was... And it was on my mind, but I wouldn't have said I wouldn't have pulled any trigger.
Wouldn't have acted on it.
No, because I think again, back to that thing of... stubbornness versus conviction, like, can we get around this rather than actually, no, all the signals are telling me that, but no, it'll all be right. It'll be fine, and it won't be fine, right?
It fucking won't.
And so actually, it happened, and there was a little bit of this is like, okay, this is happening, and then actually we settled down because there was a little bit of body because it came out of like nowhere.
Yeah, cool.
And you have a few tingles yourself about maybe is this right for the next chapter we're doing? And then he went he kind of left, as I said, on really lovely terms, so no issues there. And it was like, okay, yeah, I think we're going back to our old self. And I think, look, this is one of the hard bits of business, right, is when you grow, how do you keep your soul? Right? There's that little bit of soul that you need. And I think...
Is that not value and culture?
Yeah, it is, but it gets diluted as you get bigger, right? So how do you keep cascading it?
Yeah.
And also, look, yes, it is, but I'd push back a little on that, actually, with you. And this point. When we started off, right, we were in 2 shipping containers on a car park back in 2015. Didn't even have a toilet.
We still don't.
We still don't have. Yeah. We couldn't give a shit because there was nowhere to shit. All right, there was nowhere to shit. We had to use the neighbour
shithole.
Well, yeah, and it was a car park, so you could. It's not that we didn't want to. They said, "Do you know
how did you bag the car park? Like, how did you even get
it was
there?
next to the Aventium Apollo.
Of course it was.
Yeah, it's next to the Aventium. So we've got this car park where we could put 20 cars in, and we had 2 shipping containers, and we're starting that journey. I feel like we're running around. But
we are, yeah.
But it's a conversation, right?
Yeah,
it's a conversation.
Yeah.
And we had to, and the landlord was the office block next door to us because they didn't need the car park anymore. So we said, look, can we just at least use your toilets because we've got nowhere to go? Because to dig up a drain was like incredibly expensive because there was no. So they said, yeah, look,
you rented somebody's bog next door.
We had to borrow. We had to go there, and we still do to this day. 10 years on.
Honestly,
10 years on, we still do that to that day. We still have that for that small team. There's only 4 staff that work for that site now.
Absolutely love that.
But I guess but this was the point where I wanted to make was about your culture and values, and it's really hard. When you started off, we were all what I call generalists, right? So there was a little bit Jack Sparrow, Pirates of the Caribbean kind of moment, right?
Yeah,
everyone's doing this.
Definitely.
You're all slightly dashing around. 100%. It's all a little bit comical, a bit fun. You all huddle. Sometimes it doesn't go quite as well as you should, but you huddle, go to the pub, try to figure it out again, right? And then you have to become a navy. You need to get a bit of structure, a bit of order, starting to bring in a few specialists. Now, you say keep you onto your culture and value, but you're also changing the way you work. And actually, what was sometimes hard for us was the generalists didn't want to become specialists, and some of the people aren't right for the next part of your journey. So you then have to slightly professionalize and say to some of those guys, look, you're great as a Jack Sparrow, but you're not really good in a navy. And actually, maybe your journey with us has kind of finished. But they were also your soul. So, like, you're letting go of one of the guys that had been so integral and part of that journey. And they carry a lot of cultural value. And so some of them you do keep because they are iconic and they breathe. And we have this lovely lady called Boo Castley, and we always call her Mama Boo because she's still our Mama Boo. So she gives us a sense check of Mama. Are we still playing?
She absolutely loves it.
Yeah, and loves the values, and we'll go and she sense checks us and feels our pulse as to whether we're there. But there were others who were like, they weren't good now in a much more structured thing where there was like reporting lines and stuff like that because as the teams get bigger, and then we would running shipping containers on Excel. Now we're building tech, so we're now having tech systems built in. So there's the tech bros or tech guys coming in, and they're like very structured. And they said, look, we need format. Whereas the other guy would he would work it round by just
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
And so that culture value thing is tricky when you're going through that change.
I agree with you, but I'll definitely fucking push back on that. You know that I will.
It is everything. I agree. Look,
to get that person though, finding that one person is tough. You know, finding that person that you know, sitting the opposite side of the table, you're having these conversations. You've brought a recruiter in that's going to bring the person that you really want, and to have somebody sit across the other side of the table and have that conversation with them, and then you work out exactly whether they're a fit or not. Because I always believe that talent can be taught, but you can't teach somebody not to be a dickhead. Yeah. You know? And so if you can work that out in that first 20 minutes, 25 minutes of sat there with somebody, I'll instantly know whether I can work with them or not. And that, to me, is where I'll go back to the culture thing and the value thing. That, yes, you've got your tech guys, get that, and now the spreadsheets aren't going to work. So, okay, we are going to have to change that. I totally get that call. What I don't understand with organisations is sometimes where they take on these, like, what we would call great people that they've been there, they've got the T-shirt, get it. But culturally, they are so bad for the organisation, it's a real bad call.
And look, no, 100% agree. And I think we're talking the same thing, to be fair. But I guess what I was trying to point to you was that it's not as easy as one thinks. That, just cultural fit and therefore what was. And look, and I think another interesting point on that journey that we saw was, and maybe this was a mistake of mine, by the way, I kind of delegated that out a little too much. So we had an HR person for a while. You get people to hire. And if you're not cascading enough of those values to that person to then select, they sometimes pick them for talent rather than cultural fit.
Agree.
And then sometimes what you have is this kind of internal cancer that you then have to cut out again.
Yeah.
And
you have to dive back in anyway and fix that shit because nobody else wants to deal with it.
Yeah, exactly. And so therefore I agree with you. And I think that's a really hard thing to work out. And it was, what was really interesting when this guy joined as CEO, he said, look, I think you've got a few people here that aren't right, who were kind of mid-management, who'd been brought in by a person who was previously our HR director, who was much more corporate in the way that she was thinking about how do we scale for corporate. And we had to, she left, but then what she left behind was these kind of very corporate-y people, and we had to cut them out. And it's like, we have to go back to what we were in our soul. And so you go on the cycle of, what I would say is, look, it's a bit like youth, right? When you're young, you try to run away as far as you can from home, all right, to go and explore the world. Yeah. But then as you get older, you're trying to run back. Yeah. Okay. And I think you do that in business sometimes. When you're young, you try to become the thing that you think what corporate would look like Google or whatever your milestones are. Yeah. So you try to run towards them, and then you realize, this ain't us anymore.
Oh shit!
And then you start to run back. And then you start to run back to what you know is you, which is your authentic self. Yeah. And so what we've tried to do is actually go back to a leaner management system, much less thing, and therefore, that improves profitability, that improves stuff like that. But you've still got to keep investing for the future, which is always hard.
Totally. You went back to Oxford as an executive MBA.
I didn't go back. I went only the once. Once. You're making me sound posher than I am.
Sorry.
Yeah. I went to Manchester, mate.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
I was there when the Happy Mondays were there, the Stone Roses.
You did that 5 years after starting the business. Yeah. Like, I'm one of them. Like, I firmly believe.
I did that with Goldman Sachs, by the way. It was Goldman Sachs that sent me.
Okay. But I believe that you can have people in a boardroom that are, effectively parrots that, they talk about this theoretical, but I also believe that action will always beat that type of theoretical learning.
Sure.
And so for you, on your academic career, do you think you would have achieved all you've achieved so far without the academic side?
No chance. I think you so need to go back. So actually the biggest push for me was my daughter. Okay. All right. My daughter started buying lots of management books. Okay. I mean, she was in her 16, 17, whatever, and started buying. And I kind of went, you're clicking along now. Are you trying to build a bookshelf because it's cool? Yeah. And she said, no, Dad, I'm really reading these. And I went, no, you're not. You can't be reading this many. I mean, you're buying one like every other day. I mean, it's like, you're crazy. Yeah. And she went, no, Dad, I really am. Look, what do you want to know? And so I said, okay, here's the book. Let me ask you some questions about it. And she had read it. And I think she's read about 200. I mean, we're not...
Shit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not pissing around. I mean, as you can imagine, it's a mini form. But it was an amazing education because she learned so much from just reading and reading and reading. And then she started challenging me, and she would filter them for me. So she'd say, look, these 5 say the same thing, but this is the best version of it. Read this. And it started to kind of widen my mind and my thinking. And I think, look, the Goldman Sachs program sent us to SAI, really changed us because it starts to widen your horizons. It creates curiosity. Mm-hmm. It sharpens your toolbox, right? Because actually your toolbox, as good as it was on day one, does get a little bit blunt over time. Yeah. Definitely. And so you do need to sharpen it. And one of the ways is either to read, which I think is the cheapest way. So for all your readers, you can go to the executive courses. They are good. Yeah. And you pick them. Yeah. The reading is a really good shortcut and a much cheaper way to do it. And just learning is really important. And talking to the likes of you and seeing what you do and whatever. Yeah. Just be, having a broad scope rather than just being very narrow tunnel vision.
I think that's where Goldman was good, wasn't it? Because there were so many different businesses that were there.
Absolutely. And at all different stages.
Yeah. And I didn't have a clue, when I first went to Goldman in 2018, we're doing like 3 million quid. Yeah. I didn't have a clue. I always said, I knew that we had money in the bank. I could buy a nice car. I could have a nice house, and that was it. But I didn't understand how I made it.
Yeah, and also wider purpose, right? Because in some ways that could be enough, right? Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. I've got a nice car, a nice house, nice family. I'm ticking along. Or do I want to be something bigger?
Yeah.
And I think, people want to be part of something bigger. And that was like one of the things that we wanted to do with the company was like bring people together from just very ordinary background. Most of them working on I had to take one employee once and he said, I said, look, we've got a meeting. Can you wear a shirt? And he goes, I've only got one shirt. And what's that? I said, why have you only got one shirt? He goes, I only used it for a court appearance. So is that what?
Sounds like our lads.
And I said, and he said,
true though, isn't it?
but we'd given him a chance and
Yeah,
we wanted to take him
love
on a
that.
journey and
Yeah.
he wanted to develop
Yeah.
and he was learning and we gave him responsibilities. I said, that's fine.
And we've had a few of them,
Yeah.
where we've actually, taken them from prison and, and they've come out because, petty theft, etc., etc. But they've been worldy, and I'm trying to get a couple of them to come on the podcast to talk about it. They've gone from, they would say that, Falcon changed their lives.
Yeah.
Gave them an opportunity when nobody else would.
That's the point, right? And it just, take a
And
chance on people.
is there any better feeling than that?
Yeah.
That give back for me is just huge, like watching somebody win.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, for me, it was never me finishing the finishing line.
Yeah,
It's how many people can you take the finishing line together?
Love that.
Yeah, and also I think in business it can be a lot about numbers, right? There's, AI and everything is amazing what it can do.
Yeah.
But actually one of the great gifts when people don't do enough of is just listening. Just listening to people, understanding their problems and seeing how I can help. And that can be staff, that can be customers, that can be all of that, that then just creates a lovely flow from just listening. And that was what we learned from our kind of rent-to-buy product, right? It was like listening to drivers saying, oh, okay, yeah, like we really want to own this, but there's just we can't give. And it wasn't because they had bad credit, they had thin credit, but they said, like, no one will give us a chance. And we said, okay, let's see if we give you a chance, let's see. And there'll be a few bad eggs, there always is. But the vast majority of people are kind. And I always remember, like, you could tell how grateful people were. We would give them a car and they'd give us a box of mangoes. And I thought, that's a sweet deal.
There's the pun there, mate.
Yeah, there's a pun there. But that's how lovely the people cared that they
Yeah.
would come in and some from the Chinese community would bring us Chinese chopsticks as a gift to say, thank you for giving us this opportunity so I can provide for my family. And we went, pleasure.
So now, like, when you talk about employing people, do you have a really regimented process to that? Is that robust enough for where you want to be?
No, I think a lot of it comes back to what you said, is that sense of feeling and just getting to know them and saying whether someone's a good egg or a bad egg and how well they want to lean in. And you know what I always find out as well? Everyone knows, right? Like you get a bad egg in a company.
Yeah.
Everyone knows who the guy is.
You'd be surprised. I mean, like, I think you're right. And like, the first question I always ask is, what would your friends say about you? And it's interesting because
That's a good question.
Because a lot of them will smile, and because they'll know that now I've got to tell the truth. Because how you are in them type of environments is exactly what I want to see. Because I don't want to see the person that's just turning up to put the shirt on every day. I want to see the real you. And we've got people in the business now that when they started and they first came in and they told us who they really were. But we got it so wrong at the start, because I then started asking that question once they'd started.
All right, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
What's the greatest lesson you learned from your parents? Good or bad?
My mum always taught me to be kind. And my dad, he taught me to believe in myself.
Who taught you to swear?
My old boss.
Really?
Not my mum and dad.
Yeah.
No, I'm a totally different out of the box to my mum and dad. My dad's very, very polite. I wouldn't say he's well spoken. But he's polite. And if anything, he's over polite. But for me, yeah, he taught me to believe in myself and believe that I can do whatever. Nothing is unachievable, and that drive then, watching him work the way that he did, just spurred me on to, I can definitely go and do something with my life, and I don't have to be that kid that's being told you'll go nowhere, you'll do nothing. And it makes me smile, really, because the teacher, I can always just remember the conversation, and now what they earn in a year I can earn in a month, and that to a certain degree makes me smile. But it also makes me sad at the same time to think that that's how I was treated, that that's how far they could go. And it was different times then as well, you know.
Sure.
Fucking hell, teachers wouldn't be able to say that today. You know, kids would be coming home distraught, broken, you know.
But it also builds resiliency.
100%.
You know, and so, look, I don't think it's the right way to beat kids, but at the same time, you don't want to mollycoddle them. You know, one thing I've learned is life is tough. Life is tough, and you got to keep grinding.
And I'm with you on that.
And I think, you know, people often... Well, one other question on it. So what were your parents' backgrounds? What did
Mum was city centre girl, raised in Birmingham, raised in town. Her dad was literally a tool maker in just off Cope Street in town, and Mum worked in a plastic factory. So it wasn't like, you know, they were...
And what about Dad?
Dad, his mum didn't work. She was actually a singer in centre of London. She was from the Isle of Dogs.
Wow.
And when they were bombed, they moved to Aldridge in Warsaw. And that was the time when, like, Nan didn't work. And Grandad literally was an engineer by trade. And he set up his own business. And you know, and he wanted to do his own thing.
So he was an entrepreneur as well?
He was, and I've got Frank's, which are Grandad Frank. You know, I've got Frank's. I think that drive, that want to, can be outspoken, does say how it is, doesn't always mince his words, and that was my granddad. And my dad never got that trait. My dad never had that. My dad had, like, a very, very tactful... Like, if you're going to have a conversation with Dad, he's going to go round the houses to get to the point, where I'll just go straight to the fucking point. And I got that from my granddad, but I also got it from an old boss. And he taught me the ways of life. And that was when I did my plumbing apprenticeship, and John was just a massive influence on my life, bigger than I could ever think he could be, because he paid me absolute fucking peanuts, but he just, the lessons that I took from it was just like, always stand up for yourself, never let somebody push you around, and you know, and he was a Quinton lad, you know, so Matt, and he, God bless his soul, you know, he died a few years ago, but them inspirations, you know, they're not like, you know, world beaters, you know, and they're not like, you know, on the front of the fucking Times magazine, you know what I mean? You know, these guys are just general, normal, day-to-day people that I've taken inspiration from.
Yeah, and that's it, Charles, isn't it? You're not self-made, but you were made by others.
Yeah, aren't we all?
Yeah, and I think that's the point. You know, even though people might say you're self-made, I always think you're not. You're made by others, and those little lessons are what have crafted you over the years.
I totally agree. Agree. How do you make sure that everyone in your organisation gives a shit?
Look, I think the only way you can do that is it kind of leads from the top, right, where you cascade the values through, and if everyone can see that, one, you're humble, because I think you've got to be humble. Number two, look, be always open to listening, right? Even if the news isn't good, right? Like if I turn up and say, by the way, business isn't great because we're not doing this right now, take it on board. And your job is to be the punch bag for everyone, right? Yeah. It's to take it on and say, okay, yeah, right. Tell me why. Don't tell me what we're doing right. Tell me what we're doing wrong, or why we're not performing the way we're doing, and absorb it, all right? And look, you sometimes go home and go, shit show again. You know, it's not, this is not working, or that's not working, or whatever else is not working, and pressure. But just keep cascading volume. And then I think what you got to do is have these pockets of people in the organization that you value and believe in. And I think there is, maybe this is changing in my thinking as well, is that as you grow, you don't need rock stars everywhere. Everyone thinks you need... Look, everyone, a band isn't full of 5 amazing people. You might have one lead singer and one amazing guitarist, but you don't need everything to be amazing. But what you just need is a few. You need to be peppering the business with a few people. And as long as their sense checking and their sense that everything is kind of getting right, then it tends to work. And
not everybody needs to be a world beater, do they?
Yeah, exactly.
You need them people that are willing to turn up, do a really good job while they're there, and then go home.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
And I think as long as you're doing that, and then you've just got a feedback loop and be approachable, and actually I think you've just got to get around. Now I think the hardest thing is to get around. So I think, look, you've been amazing here, as in because your team is here, right? Because it's all in one room. So you can kind of get a sense check of the room and the pulse of the room. But you've got 100 fitters on the road. Yeah. And the poor guy down in Plymouth probably doesn't hear much from you. No, whereas the guys around here, they're just coming into the work. So you can even sense check them regionally. But the Plymouth guy and the Scottish guy are like, they're outposts.
They're just it's so hard.
Yeah.
That is
but
so
it kills
hard.
so much time as well.
It does. We've literally got like a grand plan group where everybody's in it. And so it's more of an announcement. So they know what's going on.
Yeah.
And, more than anything else.
Yeah. It's town halls or whatever you want to go, or newsletters. Yeah. And I think that becomes hard getting around people as organisations go, and so I think that's really, really hard to get it. And I think you just work really hard at being listening. I think just listening and just there's a niggle over here, and where's that? And that niggle was from over here, but it might be related to something over there. Mm-hmm. And then you've got to follow the trail. Yeah. And figure out why is it that is not working. Mm-hmm. And is it not working, or is it someone in the chain that's not working? Yeah. And again, that's not always easy.
Love that. I had to do quite a big, I suppose, cultural clean out, a couple of years ago, and make sure that, the people that we had in the organisation were, the giver-shitters, the people that, are really wanted to be part of this business long term, and then cut out the toxicity and get rid of that. When do you know that time is right to make that cut?
That's an interesting question. So,
and how do you handle the conversation?
Yeah. So I think, so there's a really interesting thing I think is like if you're ever building software systems, they talk about technical debt, right? Mm-hmm. Stuff builds up and it's just gunk in the system, right? It builds up. Yeah. Well, I think that happens exactly in businesses, right? You bring in people, you think it's all really going well. Your power's down, Charles. Well, by the way, Charles swears a lot. We never used to swear, but it's like spread around.
Fuck off,
exactly. Everyone around it. Where did that come? And you got to go, okay. And now, if it's working, that's great. And then it's kind of like, okay. And I think that is just listening, right? So go around the company and go, and I think what's really important is tiers. So I don't know how you're organising, but you might have a small reporting line, right, of whatever key managers or department heads. But it's really important to go to the guy who's on front line. 100%. And go and speak to the fitter, to the driver, and go how is everything getting? Are you hearing things like that? What are you hearing there? Are you happy? What are you not happy about? And raising it, and giving them agency to put their hands up. So I think it's really important that everyone's